Is Husker Sports with Sports Nightly. First, tonight's sports headlines.
Good evening, I'm Tim Curran. The Big Ten's Return to Play Committee is set to vote on a new set of plans and proposals sometime soon, University of Nebraska President Ted Carter told KLIN earlier today. According to Teddy Greenstein of the Chicago Tribune, the vote is set to take place on either Sunday or Monday. However, there's been no official word on what exactly the vote would all entail. Moving on to the NBA playoffs, got one game in progress right now. The Boston Celtics lead the Toronto Raptors 20-13 with about 3.5 minutes remaining there in the first quarter. It's Game 6 of the Eastern Conference semis. Boston leads it 3-2. Also later tonight, it'll be Game 4 of the Western semis between the Clippers and the Nuggets. Tip-off for that one's at 8 o'clock. Clippers lead that series 2-1. Major League Baseball action earlier today. The Milwaukee Brewers came out and topped big time over the Tigers, 19-0, the final score in that one. Games in progress. No score between the Royals and the Indians, 0-0 in the bottom of the third. Also, the top of the second, the Yankees lead the Blue Jays 1-0. And the NHL playoffs, Game 2 of the East Finals be tonight between the Islanders and the Lightning at 7 o'clock. Tampa Bay up in that series 1-0. And in the U.S. Open quarterfinals, one match is just about to get underway in the women's singles between Victoria Azarenka and the 16-seed Elise Mertens. And earlier today, Serena Williams took down Svetlana Peronkova in 3 sets at Archer Ashe Stadium to advance to the semifinals. Live inside the Husker Sports Network studios, I'm Curran.
Your state, your team, your show. This is Sports Nightly.
Bowers awaits the shotgun snap, sends the tight end in motion. They roll right. Bowers throws, pass is knocked away. Eli Sullivan knocked the football away, and the Huskers have a goal line stand, taking over the 1.
Now, let's check the pulse of Husker Nation with your hosts, Greg Sharp and Ben McLaughlin.
Here we are, fighting off this late fall-like day. Chilly temperatures, rain coming down. That's okay. A couple of these days every now and then aren't bad. We got good weather coming back here in a few days. We'll get through this. We'll get through all of this, right? Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for choosing to spend part of your night with us here tonight. We have a big show lined up. Got another edition of the Husker Huddle later this hour. Jeremiah Searle's going to sit down with Cam Meredith, who was a defensive lineman for the Cornhuskers a few years ago, part of that team that won the Legends division. And so Huskers were part of that Big Ten title game against Wisconsin back in 2012. So we'll hear from Cam Meredith in a little bit, get caught up on what's going on in his world. Lane Grindle will be here in hour 2. He's our Major League Baseball insider. So looking forward to chatting with him as everybody's coming down the stretch now, the Major League Baseball season. Most teams have passed the 40-game mark. So out of 60 games, they're kind of rounding the bend for this Major League season. We'll get his take on some of the topics of the day. We'll also have Buy Sell coming your way in hour number 3. And as always, phone lines open and available to you at 531-500-4686. That's the number. Also, that doubles up as our U.S. Cellular text line. U.S. Cellular, the official wireless provider of Husker Athletics. If that fits your fancy better than a phone call, we'd love to hear your take on the sports world here tonight. All right, let's start with the Big Ten had a response to those lawmakers that sent a letter from 6 different states within the Big Ten footprint yesterday. The Big Ten did respond back. They said, we, quote, could not agree more with the group of Midwest legislators who stated in a letter to Commissioner Kevin Warren that the Big Ten Conference is home to some of the world's leading institutions of higher learning, scientific research, and medicine. The Big Ten's Return to Competition Task Force is tapping into those resources as it prepares for a safe return to competition. The letter reflects that we all want the same thing, which is for sports to continue safely. The conference will continue to work with the Big Ten Council of Presidents and Chancellors, as it has always done, to identify opportunities to resume competition as soon as it is safe to do so. Now, our pal Adam Rittenberg, who we had on the program just last night, sent out a series of tweets, Ben. Quote, no, most will be frustrated by this statement, but the tone here and in the response to the president's tweet indicates the Big Ten's timeline to return is moving up. Won't be as quick as many want, but late October isn't out of the question from what I'm told. Daily reliable testing is the game changer, as a Big Ten source told me this week. The Big Ten has been working on options. Once that in place, presidents, chancellors likely more comfortable with a return. Goal is safe, uninterrupted season. I think that's a key phrase there. That means no bye weeks, no off weeks, not having to cancel games. Leagues without daily testing are going to face disruptions. Imagine, and this is Adam again continuing, imagine this scenario. Big Ten starts October 24th or October 31st without interruptions. Ohio State crushes every opponent. The SEC, ACC, Big 12 have to push back, end the season a few weeks. Would they really dig in to keep the Buckeyes out of a college football playoff when Ohio State would clearly be one of the top 4 teams? It's a different twist on things. What do you think?
Yeah, that's. I mean, I feel like he's working on lap 21 of a marathon, and we haven't even got out to the starting blocks yet. I mean, let's pump the brakes on that scenario, and let's maybe allow our conference to put pads on before we start on a potential end of season scenario with Ohio State. I think that's positive today. That his interpretation, I think, is a good one. That maybe that timeline is moving up, but I thought the tone of that response was a little condescending today. I think there was some I interpreted a little sarcasm in there, Greg, that while we agree that blah 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 blah, I also think that they're doubling and tripling down on their speak on I think you could tell they made it a point to point the finger at the presidents and chancellors again. I think they're trying everything they can to deflect away from the commissioner in this thing and really put the responsibility on the presidents and the chancellors, which I agree. I mean, they're the head of the conference that their leader has just been taking a beating in the public eye in the last few months with his lack of leadership. I think, again, they tried to point out that, that line that, we're working with the president and chancellors like we always have. Like, it's like, I think there's some subtleties in that aren't so subtle to those that have been paying attention to the story. And, yeah, I mean, I think that's fantastic that they're doing what they can to, move forward with playing. But, until I start to see some proof of that, until I start to see, there's rumors of a vote coming up, until I actually hear the Big Ten say, we will be voting on this date. We hope to have an answer for you by this date. Our goal is to have a starting date by this point. Greg, the last we had heard from the Big Ten is they're hoping for a spring season. That's the last official word we've heard from the Big Ten. Every other thing that has come out has been from a different source other than the league. So, if you're not buying into any rumors from any other sources and just going by what the Big Ten is saying, as far as you know, they're not gearing up to play until the spring. So I don't really interpret much from this. I'm still in prove it to me mode. Put your money where your mouth is. Start telling us what's actually going on, and give us some actual hard dates and some hard information of what's being said before I think that there's a possible scenario that Ohio State may be in the college football playoff when our guys can't even put pads on right now. I think that's a little premature.
Yeah, it does. Adam's tweets do dovetail with Teddy Greenstein, and Tim had this in the ticker that Teddy tweeted earlier today. Just learned that regarding the timing of the Big Ten vote will be this weekend at the earliest Sunday or Monday possible. So there is a little bit of smoke there. It could be one of those things that if the Big Ten, to save some face, I'm doing a little kind of what if here, to save a little face, if they were to say, okay, with the rapid testing, that changes a few things, and with our worries about myocarditis maybe being tempered by some of the new studies that we're getting, we'll agree to go, but we're going to go a month after the SEC starts because the SEC is going to start September the 26th. We feel comfortable with that late October date. Maybe go to an 8-game schedule, try to get a division champion so that they can crown a champion mid-December so that they do allow a team like Ohio State. And, hey, Ohio State's pushing the train right now because they do know they've got a team that's worthy of being a college football champion. They're pushing this. Nebraska can step back a little bit. Nebraska pushed early and I think got the ball rolling down the hill a little bit. But this needs to be Ohio State really carrying this thing now because they do have a legitimate national championship team. But the Big Ten that save some face can say, well, okay, because this happened and this happened, we're still not going to be near the first one out of the starting blocks. That's this weekend with the Big 12 and the ACC. And the SEC is late September. We'll go along with this late October thing. Plus, you can allow home games. You can allow home games being happening in Lincoln and other places around the league where you don't have to go out and rent domes and do all those things that are cost prohibitive to these schools. I could see this making a lot of sense. I understand your reluctance to jump in. I'm there too. But hearing some things today in Lincoln gives me a little bit more hope that maybe a late October start could happen. And I would certainly take that if we can get some games inside of Memorial Stadium and maybe wrap up the season by late December. You're not going to get 12. I don't know that you can get 10 games in, but you could certainly get 8 and get a season in and maybe save some guys from just opting out and jumping and getting themselves prepared for the NFL draft next fall.
I mean, I would sign on the dotted line for that right now. To me, the ultimate goal with this whole thrown together season, whenever it may happen, to me is to be ready for next August and next September. And whether that means shortening a season and starting in January or keeping the season the length that you want it and moving it up till October, I'm for whatever is going to allow the Big Ten to be able to compete at the same time as every other conference next fall time. So to me, that's the biggest goal here because, you think about, I don't think there's a scenario that there's a bowl system that the Big Ten's included in. I just maybe there is. I haven't really thought enough about it to know for sure what that might look like if the Big Ten's going to be able to play some of those conferences that have already started playing at the end of the year. I think a lot of things would have to go right for that to happen. But so that being said, I'm okay with, this season's already messed up in my eyes, Greg. Like this season is already going to be weird no matter how it's played. The only way this would have been somewhat normal is if the Big Ten was kicking off this Saturday and there wasn't fans. It still wouldn't have been normal, but we would have been on track. So to me, like this season's already messed up the way it is. Let's not mess up next season. Let's leave next season alone, find a way to make this weird season happen, however it's going to happen, and get our guys in a position where they can be ready to play next fall. To me, that's kind of where my mind is. Do I want football like last week? Of course. I definitely want football. I don't want to be sitting here, watching every other conference play and not have the Huskers play. I want Nebraska to play. I want Nebraska to play now, but I don't want to do it at the expense of next season with it already being a pretty messed up year.
Yep, no, I hear you. How much do you think Ohio State's pushing right now? I mean, I made the comment that Nebraska kind of started this thing, but really the fight needs to be from the Buckeyes because they have a legitimate national championship squad.
And my tone would be completely different if we were the Buckeye Radio Network. I mean, and I think yours would be too. If we're this way sometimes with Husker baseball, when we know that we're going to have a good team, I mean, you can't wait for that season to start. For them, Greg, it probably even started after that loss to Clemson. Wait till next year. Wait till we can get this thing rolling again next year. And it was honestly that way a little bit after year one with Scott Frost. Now we know how year two went. It was pretty disappointing, but when you have a good team that you feel can compete, and at Ohio State's level, compete at a national level for a national title, you better believe you're going to be doing everything you can to get that season played. And I would be doing the exact same thing. If I had a guy like Justin Fields and a transfer like Trey Sermon, and some of the weapons that I have offensively in a really talented wide receiver group and a lot of parts back defensively, I would be beating that drum until that thing wears out. So, yeah, if I'm Ohio State, my tone is a little bit different than it is right now. I would have a completely different take on Adams' tweet about playing in the playoff than I do being in Nebraska's situation, because that would be the whole point to playing the season. You know, if you're Ohio State and you're clamoring to play, you're not clamoring to play to potentially play Oregon at the end of the year for a Rose Bowl. You're clamoring to play so you get a chance at beating Bama or Clemson or LSU or somebody else, Oklahoma, in a national championship and raise a banner. That's why you're wanting the season to happen.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting. There's certainly, I think, a lot going on, and I do think and Teddy wrote this last week, and I agree that whatever the Big Ten's going to do, they need to make some kind of announcement soon. And Bill Moose said when we had him with us a couple of weeks ago, he thought they would have something, and he's part of that committee, that return to play committee. He thought they would have something by mid-September. We're a week away from mid-September. What is today? Today's the 9th? Well, we're 6 days away from technically the September the 15th. But just for the players' sake, Ben, they need to know something. They need to know, is it November? Is it late October? Is it January? We need to know, and the coaches want to know, so they can start structuring workouts, lifts, all those type of things to get ready. But this limbo part, this is for the birds. You got to get something out there for these guys to know what they're shooting for.
Yeah, and that's why we had a caller kind of call me out about a month ago, saying that, talking about that very thing, and that was my retort was If you can't give these guys any tangible information and can have them continue to show up to work out, that's going to wear off. They're young men. They're in college. Like they want to know what they're playing for and when they're going to play and when. I mean, they can't even be told when they can put their shoulder pads on next and go compete. You can only do certain things for so long before you show up going, what are we doing? What is going on? I'm going to go home tonight and watch SMU play, but I can't even put my shoulder pads on. Like, that's going to take over. The human nature of it is going to take over at some point. And, I mean, it would happen to me now. Even at, age 30, that would happen to me. So I'm wanting to know, if I'm a player, information, and they just haven't gotten it, which in turn, this is just round and round in circles we go, which led to that lawsuit. They just want information. They want to know what's happening and when they're allowed to be playing again.
Yeah. All right, big show coming up tonight. If you want to join us, we're going to do hear from Jeremiah Searles with our Husker Huddle next, and then we'll open up some phone lines later on. Our Huddle with Cam Meredith coming up.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Husker Huddle. I'm your host, Jeremiah Searles, here at the Husker Sports Network. Today we're joined by my former neighbor, actually, that I lived in college with here, former defensive lineman, Cam Meredith. Cam, how you doing, my friend?
Good. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. Just enjoying the last few days of summer as we switch to fall here in Nebraska. Weird fall here, no football, not gearing up for football. I mean, last week I was getting the notifications for last time this year you're at your first game, and it's a weird feeling here, but it's good that the weather's starting to change. But how are things out there in California, man? How have you been?
It's pretty good. I started a construction company out here and do some real estate, so I've been pretty busy. And, I'm from California, so it's good to be back. I obviously enjoyed Nebraska when I was out there, but this is my home. This is where my family's at. And obviously weather's been great, and it's always great.
So, yeah, you pay for your weather out there. I mean, when I was with the Chargers out there, it was just I got sunburned on Christmas Eve, and I was like, this isn't right. But so you left Nebraska and you moved back to California. Kind of what have the steps for you been since you've transitioned really out of football and into the business world now? You graduated, I think, 1 year before me, 2012, if I recall. What have you been doing over the past decade almost? I mean, it's crazy to think we're getting old, Cam. But kind of what has been the established or the line of what you've led to now?
Yeah, good question. So I've kind of had an interesting career path. Obviously, throughout my whole life, I was playing football and never really knew what I wanted to do. So after college, after I was done with football, I was actually working with my dad. He owns a security event management company. So I was working a lot of music festivals, concerts, managing stage, stuff like that. That was cool, but I didn't want to really be in that industry just because it was late nights and it's kind of sporadic and you're around a bunch of drunk people. So it wasn't really for me. And I decided to go into management. And so I was managing an entire Sears, and then realized I was good at it, but I hated retail. So I actually left that, started doing solar sales because it's pretty big in California. And then at that point, when I was doing solar, I got my real estate license. And then for the past 4 years, I've been doing real estate. And then during that time, it was mostly just residential. I was working with homeowners and investors. And then after that, I decided, hey, we get a lot of construction leads. I can start doing a lot of construction. So I partnered up with a couple partners who have been doing construction for about 10, 15 years. And it took me to where we're at now, where we do real estate and we build custom homes, and we also build ADUs, which stands for accessory dwelling unit. And it's a niche here in California because we're very tight on housing, especially in these bigger cities. So what people are doing is they're converting their garages into apartments. So we'll go in, we'll convert that detached garage, or we'll build just a freestanding unit in their backyard. So it's pretty interesting, and it changes the game for real estate. So that's kind of what I do now, and that's my niche, is building those ADUs.
Dude, that's awesome. I love the getting caught back up with guys that I played football with when I was here and seeing really how they've moved on in life. I mean, so few people get to actually go into the NFL, and we have so many former guys that have gone and been incredibly successful at a lot of other things. I had Blake Lawrence on the show a couple weeks back, and he talked about things. I mean, watching you over via social media and how you've grown and how you've been has been really fun. It's interesting that how did Nebraska really prepare you? And I mean, really, you were Pelini staff the whole time like I was. I mean, do you still take things from what you learned here from Nebraska and really the football program in particular and really helped you shape into your professional career once you moved on?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's ingrained in who I am, and that goes from all the way, as Little League, high school, but especially college, as you said. I think Bo ran a pretty tight program as far as accountability and not putting up with a lot of BS. And I think that helped me just realize, to be very structured, to be on time, do the little things, which are really important. And surprisingly enough, that holds true in the business world, because you'd be surprised at how many people don't call people back, how many people don't respond to an email. And it's all these little things where if I see that in someone, it's like, nah, sorry, I think, it's not going to work out, right, because you don't operate that way, So it's definitely helped me instill my business, mindset and just how I approach the day. I always have a schedule. I always have a plan. I always hold myself accountable. I have people hold me accountable. So, yeah, I've learned a lot from football, and specifically Bo and his staff.
Yeah, I think that's one thing people understand, and I'm learning it now as I'm transitioning out of football too, is not everyone is focused on the details all the time. And I think that it drives me insane. And I think I have to check myself. Like in football, if you're not focused on the details all the time, like you're going to get beat and cost the team. And like, so you really have that accountability from other people. And I've learned kind of as you transition into different career paths, that's like someone doesn't respond to an email or someone doesn't call you back, like they're not worried about it, but it like drives me insane.
Yeah, same here. It's just like, I would say like 70 to 75% of people are just lazy or just do the bare minimum,
Absolutely.
Might seem high, but that's my number out here, at least in California.
Oh, yeah. Well, California is a different breed, man. As far as we asked a lot of the people that are going through OTAs and stuff, guys in the NFL, how COVID has really affected them and how they've had to really kind of adapt and overcome. I'm sure that COVID has affected you guys in a lot of different ways. How have you had to maybe adapt and overcome some obstacles over these last 6 months with the government shutdown? I mean, California, you guys are still really shut down. Like, what are some things that you've been able to do to keep yourself going here?
It was hard. The first, 2 months during the whole real lockdown, real estate was kind of shut off. Mm-hmm. So it did put a strain on the market. Like right now, inventory is down 30% in Orange County year over year. So people are afraid to sell their homes, and there's still a lot of buyers. So for us, it's a weird real estate market. And during that time, we had to obviously sit down and figure out what we were going to do. Luckily, we still had a lot of these construction jobs going, and that kind of kept us afloat. And then we saw after that 2-month lockdown, things started to ease up and get back to normal. So for us, at first, it was a little adjustment. It still is. I mean, when you do real estate showings, you have to sign papers before you get in. You have to wear gloves, booties, all this stuff. I mean, I get it, but it's just a pain in the butt. And unfortunately, that's kind of what we have to do now. But California is obviously more lockdown friendly, and I think people here are getting a little sick of it. I mean, I get the whole situation, but I'm telling you, I hear local business owners and people talking all the time, and at some point, it's a little much here in California, at least in my opinion.
No, I think everyone here in the Heartland agrees with you, Cam. You're a Midwest boy at heart, and we love you for it. One thing I want to talk about a little Husker football here as we switch gears. Again, no fall here in Nebraska. It's a weird thing, and I think that there's been a lot of news going on in the Big Ten as far as, Trump's said that he called Kevin Warren. Kevin Warren came out, said with the lawsuit coming from Nebraska. I mean, what do you think the impact is? And you just touched on a little bit about business owners and stuff. Is now that you're in the business world, that football's so much more here than just 11-on-11 inside Memorial Stadium. It's the lifeblood for a lot of these businesses. I mean, imagine, what do you think is going to happen to areas like the Haymarket and O Street? Do you think Lincoln can survive a fall without football?
I do, and, I think the Big Ten has to figure out what they're going to do at some point. I mean, you have, mostly every other major conference playing. We're just one of the ones that are not. So I think for a town like Lincoln, I think it'll be fine. I think a lot of people still like to go out and support local business in Lincoln, especially that downtown area. It's a very good community like that. So I think they'll be okay. Obviously, it's going to be a big adjustment. And, people are going to feel weird not having football, the first few months of fall. But I think, again, they'll figure it out. I think football will eventually come. It's just a matter of, when that is.
I mean, we hope it comes. I think the earliest we saw maybe late October, Thanksgiving start. But let's fast forward and say we do start in Thanksgiving. What are you expecting to see out of this? You're 1 year farther removed than I am from this football team, but you told me a little bit. You still watch them, still a big Husker fan. I mean, we're a part of special fraternity. We wore that N on the side of our helmets. Year 3 Scott Frost program, new defense coordinators, no defensive linemen all over the place. You're a former defensive lineman. What are you looking for, especially from the black shirts here in year 3 of Scott Frost?
I would just say this. I believe in Scott Frost. I think he knows what he's doing. It does take a while to get things going, and I think he can turn it around, and I see that. And I think the most important thing is culture, and breeding that culture, that winning culture. And I think he's trying to do that, and I think he'll be okay. But again, it's the program. It did take a little step back, as we know, during that Riley era. And that's pretty much what I can say. I do believe in Scott Frost. I believe in his coaches, his picks for coaches, and I think he'll get us on the right path.
I agree. I think everyone in Huskerland agrees with you. I think everyone was excited to see what we could get on the field here this fall. But I mean, as you know, I think that there's a little bit of development time that maybe we can sneak in here if season really isn't until October, might benefit this Nebraska young football team. They got a lot of pieces that need development, and so no spring ball, kind of a limited fall camp, that was going to hurt us. But I mean, you played as a young guy. I played as a young guy. How hard is it to really go out there when the bullets are flying as a redshirt freshman and trying to get your feet wet, but also needing and feeling that pressure to contribute when you're on the field?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, when a lot of these guys are 18 years old, 19 years old, playing with grown men. I mean, it's totally different. So I agree with you. I think that if they have more time to prepare, that could be definitely a huge benefit for us, especially with a lot of these young guys. I mean, again, I don't follow too closely. I do know we have a lot of young players that need to develop. But yeah, I would totally agree that that extra time we can get better and we should get better.
Absolutely. Well, Cam, we appreciate you joining us here on Husker Huddle here on the Husker Sports Network. We're excited to keep continuing up, and we'll be catching up with you soon. It's awesome to hear your story, kind of where you've grown, how you've grown since you've left here in Nebraska. We wish you to stay safe out there in California during these times and hope that things can get back to normal for you. Anything else you'd like to say to Husker Nation before you head out?
No worries. I'll be back for a game this year, hopefully. And Jeremiah, I'll come see you and your family and your dog and your newborn and all that. So I can't wait to go out. If you're ever out here, let me know. I'd love to see you guys. I know your wife's from California, so I'd love to see you guys.
Absolutely, man. Next time you're here, we'll bring up the glory days from when we used to live next to each other. Maybe throw a few garage parties. Yeah,
we have to. I didn't get into too much detail here because this is rated PG, but there's a lot of rated, R stuff.
It happens. College is a fun time. So we thank you for joining us here, Cam. We'll catch you guys next week here on Husker Huddle.
Okay, see you, man.
Good stuff there, Jeremiah Searles with Cam Meredith, who played on those Husker teams that won a couple of division titles and played for a conference title. Just couldn't quite get it done in a couple of those games. Cam joined us on our Sports Nightly Hotline, brought to you by the Woodhouse Auto Family, bringing you more choices in brands, locations, and service. Experience the difference. Purchase with confidence. This is Woodhouse. 531-500-4686, the number if you want to join us. Your thoughts about Big Ten football. What if a late October start was possible? Would you be up for that? We'll get your take coming up next.
500-4686, the number to get into the program here tonight here on Sports Nightly. Thanks to Jeremiah Searles and former Husker defensive lineman Cameron Meredith for joining us here tonight. Let's go to the phones and welcome on our first call tonight. We go to Mike in Omaha. Hey, Mike, what's going on?
Hey, tell me this about Adam Rittenberg. How reliable do you think he is when he says his sources tell him that we could be playing in, mid to late October?
Adam's based out of Chicago. I think he's pretty hooked up. I've got a fair amount of trust in him.
Because I know you guys were pretty down yesterday, but I mean, to me, 24 hours can make a lot of difference. This couldn't be better news if he's got really good sources. I mean, don't you think?
Yeah. It's crazy, Mike, how fast this can change based on what information comes out. And that's the hard part of it, Mike, is we haven't been given much information. And I feel like some of the stuff that we get is speculation. Some of the stuff we get is half-truths. For example, what we heard from the Minnesota president. At first, they said that we weren't sure there was a vote. Now they're saying that they did have a vote. So it's hard to find what information is reliable and what isn't. So especially when we're not given much. It's like you go to a steakhouse and you're given a little side dish and that's what you can eat. That's basically what we're given when it comes to information.
Yeah, to me, the best information has come from our chancellor and our president.
Yeah,
and
I agree with you.
Didn't President Carter say today that, hey, things are looking good, there's going to be a vote pretty soon? And when the commissioner said we won't revisit that, You know what my reaction, when I was offended when he said that, and I've been defending him too, in a sense, because he wasn't the one that made this decision. It was the presidents and chancellors. But when he said that, I was thinking, says who? Because you were the one that said we had this great schedule with all this flexibility. And it turns out we are revisiting it. So he was wrong about that too. So this is good news if Rittenberg knows what he's talking about.
Right. Good call, Mike. I appreciate it. I agree with what you said about Nebraska's spokespeople and people of power being the ones that have been giving us the most information. And with Ted Carter saying that, Nebraska president today, I've got no reason to not trust what he says. So I definitely think that that's going to be a possibility.
On our text line, Ben, Brad, and Holdridge said regarding the Big Ten statement today, they love to use the word safe. It's just a very convenient, vague word to use whenever they don't want to explain something. So what is their definition of safe? Are they ever going to explain that? Is it 0 cases in the conference? Is it 1 per team, 10 cases? What's the threshold? That's a fair statement, and we don't know because we haven't been able to ask these type of questions. It would be nice if Kevin Warren would hold a press conference and get out and take questions from guys like Adam Rittenberg or Teddy Greenstein, who cover this league for the Chicago Tribune and ESPN.com. but he hasn't done that. And, maybe he doesn't know what that means to each individual university president and chancellor. I mean, that could be part of the case as well. But Mike's point's really well taken. I mean, we've gotten the best information when we hear Ronnie Green and Ted Carter go out and talk about those things. Also on our text line, we got, what's the difference between late September and mid-October? This stuff is wild. It's laughable, really. Again, I go back to one of my statements in the opening part of the show. The Big Ten needs some cover. They need to save some face. Anytime you're an organization like this, you don't want to just totally admit wrongdoing or error. So that's what I think may be going on now is how do we save some face here? Because Kevin Warren saying about this will not be revisited, that was ridiculous. That was a ridiculous statement by him a couple of weeks ago when he said that. So now, with rapid testing, with some better information on myocarditis out there, I think it gives them cover to go, okay, now we feel like this is, but we now need to let our institutions ramp it back up to be ready to play because they all shut her down back on August the 10th, and tomorrow's the 1-month anniversary of that solemn day. They need time to get ramped back up, and so that's why people keep saying October the 10th. I don't think that's happening. But the 24th or the 31st, yeah, I could see it happening. So, Mike, appreciate the call. 531-500-4686, the number if you want to be a part of the program via phone call or text. We're back to wrap up the hour next. Bringing you more choices in brands, locations, and service. Experience the difference. Purchase with confidence. This is Woodhouse. Tomorrow night, the National Football League begins the 2020 season. The Chiefs and Texans play tomorrow night at Arrowhead, then the full slate on Sunday, and then 2 Monday night games. Ben, they're having these really bad wildfires right now in the state of California. In fact, the San Francisco 49ers are monitoring the air quality. They are set to host Arizona Sunday afternoon. Also, the Rams are at home this weekend playing Dallas in the Sunday night game. So those wildfires, the air quality potentially could cause a postponement or cancellation of one of those games. Why not? I mean, it's 2020, right? We cancel and postpone. Everything's getting postponed. But remember, we were worried about that a couple years ago when the Huskers traveled out to Eugene to take on Oregon. They were having some of those same issues about the same time. This is the time of year they get those. But, man, that stuff is bad. If you've been watching some of that, it's crazy.
Yeah, 3 years ago to the day, we played Oregon on the 9th of September. I remember that very vividly, and because it was really bad early in the week before we went out there, like Monday, Tuesday. We weren't sure what the situation was going to be, but yeah, I remember that very well with everybody there and all the locals talking about that. The air quality and if it would be safe enough to play football.
How distracted are you going to be in the next hour? I mean, you've got Kemba and the Celtics trying to close out the Raptors. They're up 52-48 at the half. I mean, at halftime now, so you're locked in with us. But I mean, you're such a Kemba guy.
Yeah, not that. Like I said, I'm a big Kemba guy, but I'm not a Celtics guy. So it's not like I'm hanging on by a thread here. Waiting. I hope for his sake that he can advance, but I. Not a big Celtics fan at all, and you're not a big Celtics fan, aren't you? You were a Laker fan growing up,
yeah,
so
I was.
You're pretty non-Boston as it comes to, right?
Yeah, I've never been a big Celtics guy. I do like Kemba like you, but if they hold on tonight, then the East Conference Final would be set because the Bucks got bounced last night by the Heat, so it's looking like it could be the Heat Celtics in the East Conference Final. The West is a couple of games behind those guys, so they're a ways away from doing that. And you guys who follow the NBA are going to have to help me out here. I read this earlier today. The NBA is pointing at November 18th for their draft. Why would they wait till November 18th? Any idea? They usually have their draft like a week after the finals end. I mean, you got all those guys that are ready to find out who they're playing for. Well, why? I don't know why you would wait that long.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe to get him out of the bubble. I've got no clue.
Yeah, memo NBAI November 18th. That just makes no sense to me. That seems crazy. Usually it's about a week after the finals end. The finals are going to end in mid-October, but I don't know. All right, next hour, we're going to talk some Major League Baseball. Our insider, Lane Grindle, is going to join us, and we've got some updated thoughts about college basketball. We'll get into that next.
First, tonight's sports headlines.
Good evening, I'm Tim Curran. Starting off with some NBA playoffs action. It's Game 6 of the Eastern Conference semis. Right now, Boston leads Toronto by a point, 52-51, with about 11 minutes left in the third quarter. Boston leads that series 3-2. Also coming up in about an hour from now, Game 4 of the Western Conference semis between the Clippers and the Nuggets. The Clippers lead that series 2-1. In Major League Baseball action, one final score from earlier today. The Brewers absolutely dominated the Tigers earlier today by going on to win 19-0. Games in progress. The Royals lead at 1-0 over the Indians in the top of the sixth. Other games in progress. Yankees are tied up with the Blue Jays 2-2 at the top of the fifth. In the top of the fourth, it's the Chicago White Sox who lead the Pittsburgh Pirates 2-0. Also tied up at 2 apiece. It's the Marlins and Braves in the bottom of the second. In the top of the third, the Orioles lead over the Mets 4-1. Moving on to NHL action. It's Game 2 of the East Finals just about to get underway between the Islanders and the Lightning. Tampa Bay is up in that series 1-0. And in the U.S. Open quarterfinals, one match in progress in the women's singles. Victoria Azarenka leads at 1-0 over Elise Mertens, the 16th seed from Belgium. And earlier today, Serena Williams took down Svetlana Pervonkova in 3 sets at Archer Ashe Stadium to advance to the semifinals. Live inside the Husker Sports Network studios, Adam Curran.
Your state, your team, your show. This is Sports Nightly.
Snap down, the kick is up, and the kick is good! Here's Lane! Huskers win it 13-10. They beat Northwestern and go to 4-2.
Now, let's check the pulse of Husker Nation with your hosts, Greg Sharp and Ben McLaughlin.
Yeah, we're back. Hour 2, Sports Nightly here on a wet Wednesday night. In and around Lincoln, Nebraska. Much needed moisture. Could do away with the 40-degree temperatures, though. But, man, what a drop, right? Almost 50-degree. I guess it has been a 50-degree drop the last couple of days. 531-500-4686. That's the number if you want to dot us up with a comment or a question. Or you can fire us off a text. Same number, 531-500-4686. That is our U.S. Cellular text line. U.S. Cellular, the official wireless provider of Husker Athletics. Interesting, odd, curious story that popped out this morning, Ben, and it relates to the NCAA basketball tournament. The ACC coaches, so this is Duke, North Carolina State, all those teams used to be Maryland, but they're somewhere else now. Their coaches are proposing an all-inclusive NCAA tournament. The coaches on their call today voted unanimously on this to present it to the full body of the NCAA. Why? I don't get this at all. I mean, I know that their season is still in flux, and we don't have total confirmation on what they're going to do, although it looks like they're going to start around Thanksgiving and maybe have almost a completely full season for them. I don't get the logic of trying to have a 350-team tournament. Do you understand this at all?
No, it's so dumb. It is so dumb to me. That's a postseason tournament that you should be rewarded with for playing well in the regular season. Why are we playing a regular season if that's the case? If everybody's going to play in this tournament in the end, why even have a regular season? I mean, this is the same. It's the same principle why I don't want to extend the college football playoff, but for the same reasons as this situation here on a much larger scale. Greg, that's what the conference tournaments are for, right? The conference tournaments are essentially a blown-up version of an NCAA tournament. It is teams with every league, with the ability to compete for a berth at the postseason. That's what that is. That's essentially what the conference tournaments are.
Right.
And you've got so many teams that otherwise would have not earned a berth into the NCAA tournament that find a way through a conference tournament and earn a berth that way for the automatic bid. So I cannot believe this is coming from a prestigious conference like the ACC at a situation like this. It is utterly dumb to me. I just cannot fathom why this is a good idea in any sense.
Joe Lenardi, who would be out of a job if this thing got pushed through because he's Mr. Bracketologist, he tweeted today, hate to be that guy, but the ACC proposal won't work. Hate to be that guy. Call it what it is, Joe. It's a terrible proposal. And think about the heavyweights that were in on this call, Ben. I mean, you're talking about Mike Krzyzewski, Roy Williams, Leonard Hamilton. You can go on down the list of the great coaches in that league. Why would they come together and think that's a good idea? Just crazy. And you're absolutely right. And maybe they're thinking that with COVID still around, that maybe you're not going to be able to have the conference tournaments again in March, so you can't. But so you're just going to let everybody? Just crazy that came up today. It got horrible play all day long. I mean, those guys must be embarrassed tonight. God, did I really vote for that thing?
Well, and just think about it from a coach's perspective, right? Like if I'm a coach and particularly of a good team, maybe not even elite team. I won't even say Duke. Give me a team like Florida State, right? A team that is a perennial tournament team the last few years. They'll pop up and make a Sweet 16. Let's just assume for a second we're Leonard Hamilton. When you're making a postseason, don't you want the easiest path possible to win a national championship, right? Like if I'm Florida State, I'm going, okay, not only do I want a good seed, but I want less teams in this tournament so I have a better chance to win, right? I mean, that if I'm a coach, that's my mentality is I would rather play – if I'm a top 25 team, and Florida State's a borderline top 25 team, let's just assume for a second that they are. You're probably going to get in if it's a 56 team tournament or it's a 64. Let's just use 64. You're probably going to get in if it's a 32 team tournament, even if there are some if the at-larges were a thing and you needed to occupy one of those at-large spots, you're probably going to get one. I would rather there be a 32-team tournament than a 64-team tournament because it makes my path to the Final Four easier. If I'm having to compete, we always say that too on March Madness, Greg. There's a reason why it's so hard to win is because you run up against teams that get hot and it takes – maybe even not even a full 40 minutes. It might even take 20 minutes of bad basketball for your season to be over. I mean, you could be utterly dominant the entire season in 20 minutes of bad basketball if you run into a Jimmer Fredette or a Stephen Curry from Davidson who is throwing everything in the ocean and everything's going down and you can't make anything on the other end. Your season's done. So, it's already hard as it is, and you're making it 5-6 times harder to win a national championship on yourself by this way of thinking. If I'm a team like what's a lower level ACC team? I mean, if I'm a team like Boston College, I love it. I'm all for it. Get me in the NCAA tournament. But if I'm a team like Virginia or Duke or North Carolina, especially a team like Duke who's been so bad in the NCAA tournament, right? They almost lost to UCF the other year. Was it maybe even last year, the Zion year? They almost lost to UCF. I mean, you shouldn't be any more against this than you're having a hard enough time winning a 68-team tournament, let alone a 360-team tournament. It just makes no sense to me.
Never before has a 128 beaten a 1. It hasn't happened in this sport. A few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, there was some real momentum to expand it to 96, and I was really opposed to that. I'm not really loving the 68 and the play-in games to get it to 64. I'm not a fan of that. Can we just go back to 64? Can we just do that? I mean, come on. What you're eliminating is a lot of 8 and 10 conference teams. They finished 8 and 10 in their league, and it might be the 10th place Big Ten team or the 10th place ACC or 11th place ACC team. That's who's picking up spots 65, 66, 67, and 68. Do they really? They didn't have a good enough year to deserve it. Do we really need to put them in there? Why can't we just go back to 64?
Well, and here's my biggest gripe with that. It's not that they expanded the tournament. It's I didn't love it as it is. I don't love the play-in games, the bunny brackets, and I absolutely hated the fact that they called those first 4 games the first round. That really grinded my gears. But the reason why we were told they were expanding it is to help those those mid-majors to help the teams like Butler, who would not now in the Big East, but you think of those other mid-majors that that were guaranteed a spot and then would lose in their conference tournament, and then maybe not have enough on paper resume to make it in. All it's done is added to the Power Fives. Those mid-majors don't ever get those spots. So, that's all it's turned into is Trae Young in Oklahoma. They're going to be fun to watch. Let's put them in the tournament. That's all it's turned into. So even the purpose of expanding the tournament hasn't even, come to fruition of what they thought it would be. If they were to stick to that and say, okay, let's give these mid-majors, let's give a team like St. Louis or, another team that had a really good year that isn't going to earn an at-large or be on the bubble for an at-large, let's give them the spot. No, it's been Tennessee, and it's been Georgetown, and it's been Iowa, and it's been Dayton. That's who it's been.
Well, Dayton would fit under what you were talking about a little bit because the A-10 would be more like that. But a couple years ago, it was K-State against Wake. So Big 12, ACC.
Syracuse was in it one year.
Syracuse against USC. I mean,
Iowa played Tennessee one year.
You're right. I mean, that's what it's been. And so it defeated the whole thing. The reason you're right. They sold it to everybody saying, well, we're going to be able to get maybe a second Missouri Valley team in, or we're going to get a team from, pick a conference, the A-10 or the Atlantic Sun or something like that, a team that ran a really good, but it hasn't. It's just been, like I said, it's been Team 10, 11 from a power conference that was 8 and 10 in their league, but by gosh, we want to get them in there because they're a bit of a name brand. All right, one other thing, college basketball related. John Rothstein, who's an excellent college basketball writer for CBS Sports, he tweeted out this afternoon that the Big Ten remains intent on planning to play non-conference games. And I was talking about this with someone earlier today because I was saying, what are you hearing on hoops? And is the Big Ten, are they going to do it like what they did in football? Go, well, we're just going to go conference only. We're just going to do that. Nope. According to John Rothstein, they're not going to do that. They are going to allow some non-conference games to be played. And if they start the week of November 25th, which is all signs are pointing to that for college basketball, there's no reason they can't play pretty much their entire season. Now, you may have to bubble up some weekends and have more kind of tournaments where you bring 8 teams to a site and say, we're going to give you 3 games in 3 days, and we're going to keep everybody in the same hotel so we can kind of keep a bubble on this thing. But rapid testing should be plentiful by November. College basketball almost should go uninhibited, in my eyes, as we sit here in September.
Yeah, I agree. And if you want to cut down some, that's fine. But yeah, there's been enough time to plan around the situation. And again, whenever we talk about this, we bring up how there's no doubt college basketball's following and studying every move of college football, and taking notes of the good and the bad things that are being done to make playing possible. And like we'll continue to say, it's on a much smaller scale for hoops than it is football. So it's much more feasible. It's much more doable. So if you want to scale some of the games or limit some of the travel, you can do that. But there's no reason, in my opinion, to bang non-con altogether. I don't think that should be a thing. I think there's more than enough. Even if you want to just go local, Greg, if there's more than enough local teams in college hoops to hop on a bus and go somewhere. If you don't want to go fly out to Maui, or you don't want to go to Puerto Rico, or wherever some battleship somewhere to play, like you don't have to, but there's enough option out there to where you could do it safely.
No doubt. And you've traveled with those basketball teams enough to know that if you have the rapid test, when those guys saunter down for breakfast, take the test right there. If you're good, great, you're playing tonight. If you're not, okay, go to your room, quarantine. We're going to find a way different home for you on the road. We're going to maybe buy you a one-way ticket or something, or have somebody drive you back because you're going to be in quarantine for a while. It's so easy to do for college basketball, and that's why I'm really encouraged that that's going to come off without a hitch. But I am dead set against this 350 team. Let's let everybody be in the NCAA tournament. There's so many brilliant basketball minds in that room. I'm baffled how they came out and go, yeah, that's a good idea. Tony Bennett, put your hand up. No, are you kidding me?
Especially, you think of the weight of some of those coaches with Krzyzewski and Williams and Bennett. I mean, even Hamilton for that matter. I mean, you'd like to think that those voices are loudest when they could just say, guys, this is stupid. We're not doing that. Sorry.
Bad idea.
Next on the agenda, please.
Yeah. Don't let that idea slip out of this room. Let's bury that thing and let's make sure nobody gets a hold of it. Instead, they vote on it and say, yeah, and then they go call some of these reporters and go, guess what we just passed? An all-inclusive NCAA tournament.
Oh, man. Unbelievable.
Crazy. All right, need to take a break. When we come back, our Major League Insider. Oh, you all know him and love him, right? Lane Grindle. He'll join us next. 19-0. Man, save some runs for tomorrow, huh?
Yeah, that was wild. The Brewers' offense has struggled really all season long, and so for that kind of a breakout, it's one of those throw your hands up and say that's baseball. We've been saying that this offense is underachieved, that there was a higher ceiling than what we've seen, that there's a little bit more in there. And, we'll see if this carries over, and this is the sign of something to get started with this offense. But it was certainly a much-needed step in the right direction for the Brewers offensively. And, they set a franchise record with 13 extra base hits today, and that was really good to see. A lot of doubles. They had a season high of 4 doubles in a game a couple of times before today. They had 4 doubles in the second inning today, and I think they finished with 8 doubles in the contest. So this was a really good approach from the start, and kind of overshadows what was a brilliant pitching performance by Corbin Burns, and overshadows a guy that's turning into a Cy Young candidate in the Brewers rotation right now that not a lot of people are talking about. He lowered his ERA to 1.99 today. He's among the league leaders in strikeouts, and he's only been in the rotation for about 4 weeks. So it's pretty exciting stuff from a young ace.
Lane, there was a lot of talk a couple weeks ago about how scoring was down across the league in at least the first month or so. Is that I haven't tracked it. Is the trend still that way, or do you notice any of that as you go through the scores on a daily basis?
I guess I haven't noticed it in a great way. I mean, I think you saw early on there were a lot of averages that were down. There was some scoring that was down. Pitchers certainly seemed ahead of the hitters at the beginning of the year, and I didn't really anticipate that would be the case. I thought with warmer weather and everything else, and just typically a guy can go to spring training and get, a veteran guy can go to spring training and get 25 at-bats, and they're ready to go, typically. So I really thought this shorter summer camp would probably benefit the hitters more than the pitchers, because the pitchers need a little bit more time to ramp up typically. But it was kind of the opposite. The pitchers came out ready to go, and the hitters really struggled out of the gate. You are seeing a lot of guys take off now. I mean, Trout's out of his mind right now, really hot. Marcell Ozuna is doing what he typically does. He gets into one of those 2 or 3 week stretches where he gets really hot and hits a bunch of home runs. So I think it's normalizing, maybe, is the right word for it all. But it's been interesting to follow. And, I mean, it's just weird because it feels like you're just starting to settle into the season, Greg, and we're really, winding it down now. I mean, the Brewers finished up the road trip this afternoon, and they come home for a homestand with the Cubs, Cardinals, and Royals, and then they're done at Miller Park this year. And then they go on the road for a 2-city trip, and the season's over. It's really hard to wrap your mind around it, and it's been hard, I think, for front offices to evaluate players as a result of it. The Brewers have a couple of examples of that. Brock Holt and Justin Smoak. In a normal year, they probably hang in there with them and see if they can get themselves righted, but they had to designate them for assignment and release them because they just don't have that kind of time to wait around on guys. And now Brock Holt's with the Nationals, and he's hitting pretty well. So you're playing a lot of guessing games with some of that stuff.
One team that's caught fire and certainly is in the race now in the NL East are the Philadelphia Phillies. What do you see from them? And they've got an young guy from Omaha that's tearing it up, Alex Boehm, who's came out of Wichita State.
Yeah, Alec Boehm's really good, and he's come up big in a lot of clutch situations for them, which is pretty impressive for the lack of experience that he has, that he's been able to do what he's been able to do. They're a good team. I've always liked them from a position player standpoint. I think they have a good rotation, and they've shored up the bullpen a little bit with some of the moves they made at the deadline, and they needed to because their bullpen was really atrocious early on in the season, and they got off to a slow start. But, look, I like where they're at from a managerial standpoint. I think Joe Girardi's a very good manager. I think he's got good pieces to work with there, and I think they'll be a threat in the NL. This postseason format's going to be fun, Greg, because everybody's kind of on pretty equal footing. The 1 seed to the 8 seed, there isn't that big a difference. Now, if they travel to sites, there will be. But if they end up doing it in a bubble and they haven't confirmed what they're going to do yet in terms of where the postseason is going to be played, if they do end up doing it in a bubble, there's not that big of a difference between the 1 seed and the 8 seed at that point. And so it could get a little crazy, and that's fun.
Don't they need to make that decision fairly soon? I think, we're going to be in the middle of September here in about 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, I would think in the next week we would probably see some sort of a decision on that. That would be my guess. And if we don't see a decision on it, it probably means they're not going to put it in a bubble, because the original plan was not to do that. The original plan was to play the first round, those first 3 games, at the home site of the higher seed. And so that's kind of the plan. And if they don't say something in the next week, my guess is it'll be like a football replay, the call stands. It's not confirmed,
yeah.
But the call stands. That would be my guess, but we'll see. And I think it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, really, this has worked pretty well. I mean, people were critical of baseball early on, and there was a couple of outbreaks with the Marlins and Phillies. There's been some positive tests here and there along the way, but MLB, I think they deserve so much credit, in my opinion, for how they learned from the first 2 situations. They changed their protocols, their safety, their health protocols as a result of it, and they pushed forward. And I think that in order for sports to resume again, somebody had to go out there and do it. And I think baseball has proven a pretty good path forward for the rest of sports. I know basketball did what they did, but they also did it in a bubble, which is great. I mean, I think that's commendable. But for sports to really resume down the road as normal again, we're going to have to be able to play them outside of the bubble to get fans and everything else back in there. And the format that MLB has would allow you to open up the gates really at any point in time if you felt like it was safe enough to make that call. So I think what MLB has done has been really commendable, and I'm glad they've done it the way they have.
Lane Grindle's with us. He's our Major League Baseball insider here on Sports Nightly on the Husker Sports Network. We all know what Jackie Robinson means to the African-American community and his influence on the sports world. I'm going to ask you about Roberto Clemente, because I know today was the day that Puerto Rican players were allowed to wear the number 21 in honor of Roberto Clemente. And your broadcast partner, Bob Uecker, would have played the same era of Roberto Clemente. Is he talked about much? And man, what a great player. He certainly was in the same ilk of a player as Jackie Robinson was.
He's one of the greatest players that ever played the game, Greg. I don't know if you saw this. I was talking about this on the broadcast last night. Before the season started, it was June or July, there was a video that went viral on Twitter and online of him making a throw off of his back foot from the warning track in right field and gunning down a runner at the plate. And it was stupid to watch, to be honest with you. He was so special. What was he? The 71 World Series MVP, MVP of the league in 66, 15-time All-Star, I think Roberto Clemente was, and 100-time human All-Star. I mean, that's the other part of the Roberto Clemente story, is that he's one of the great people that we've had probably walk the face of the earth, and certainly one of the greatest humans that's ever played baseball in terms of character and everything else that comes along with it. I know that the Puerto Rican players were glad that they were able to wear the number 21. And then really other guys said, hey, we want to do it too. Brent Suter did it for the Brewers. He reached out and asked for permission, and they granted it to him to wear the number 21. And I think you'll see more momentum with this moving forward. I think you're going to see, similarly to how we have a Jackie Robinson Day, I think we're going to have a Roberto Clemente Day moving forward. And I think it's rightfully so. I'm Catholic. Roberto Clemente was almost canonized. I mean, there was conversation about it, of whether or not they could make him a saint. That's how special of a person Roberto Clemente is, because I think that's pretty hard to do, to be canonized. Mm-hmm. And so beyond all the unbelievable things he's done on the field, this is just a tremendous human being. And I think it's somebody that MLB baseball should be eternally grateful played their game. And I think they should raise him up, and they should highlight him every chance they get.
Yeah. I don't know if you know this, but the Kansas City Chiefs play tomorrow night. You aware of that?
I don't know if you know this, but they won the Super Bowl this year. It was pretty awesome. I don't know if you watched. It was great.
Uh-huh.
They came fourth quarter. It was awesome. Yeah, I know. I'm excited. I have to, be a little careful up here, because the Packers fans, they're a little bit loyal. They're a lot like Husker fans. But I don't hide it too much. I mean, I pretty much wear it on my sleeve that I'm a big Chiefs fan. And why wouldn't you? They're Super Bowl champs. They got the best player in the NFL, and they have pretty good cast around them. They're going to be good for a long time. So I enjoy it. We paid for this, man. It was a long time coming, Greg.
Will you be able to watch the game, or are you going to have to DVR it, or what's your plan?
Well, I asked Major League Baseball when they decided to play 6 games, they get the Brewers an off day on this day. So luckily, we got an off day. So I have no distractions. I am sitting on the couch watching the Chiefs tomorrow night. It's going to be awesome.
Very good. All right, so off day tomorrow, then what do the crew have?
The Cubs come to town, 3 with the Cubs, and then 5 in 3 days with the Cardinals, 2 doubleheaders. And then an off day the next Thursday, and then the Royals come to town for 3. So hopefully the Royals and we won't be able to talk because I can't get down on the same field, right now because of COVID. But otherwise, we would talk about the Chiefs hopefully being 1-0 at that point.
Very good. All right, well, enjoy the Chiefs. Have a great week. We'll talk next Wednesday. 31500-4686, the number if you want to dial us up with a comment or question, or fire us off a text on our U.S. Cellular text line. Greg Sharp, Ben McLaughlin with you Wednesday night. The Atlanta Braves, Ben, just posted an 11-run second inning against the Miami Marlins tonight. How about that? 11-run inning. In the second inning of a game, sometimes you see that late in the game when somebody doesn't have it, but, man, usually not like that early.
No. And against Pablo Lopez, nonetheless, we've been kind of making fun of the Marlins. Not making fun of, but we're talking about the Marlins being able to somehow win games with such a young pitching staff and guys that we haven't really heard of. Pablo Lopez is a really good young arm, and it's not surprising. The Braves are just murdering the ball as a team right now. They've had back-to-back players hit 3 home run games. Adam Duvall and Marcelo Zuna both did it in back-to-back games, and they're crushing the ball right now as a team. Ronald Acuna is back. So, yeah, I mean, Atlanta has a lot of trouble on the mound, but they're bats right now. And Ozzie Albies making his return tonight. He's been on the IL for most of the year. Pretty incredible stuff.
Are they going to be able to hold off the Phillies? Because the Phillies have kind of found life here, and I think you and Austin and I had the top 10 a few weeks ago where we did kind of a power rating in Major League Baseball. We didn't have the Phillies in there. They might be now. They are making a charge here with a couple of weeks to go in the season.
Yeah, they are. And the Phillies have kind of gotten their swagger back a little bit too. They've always had, Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, so they've got 2 good frontline guys, but their bullpen is terrible. So Philadelphia has to find a way to kind of bridge the gap with their bullpen. They bring in Heath Hembree and they bring in Brandon Workman from Boston. Workman's been better, ? Slightly better. He's earned a couple of 3 saves, I think, in the last week. But Hector Neris is a mess. Heath Hembree blew up the other day. The Phillies just need to find a way to score a bunch of runs because as soon as they get to their bullpen, hold on because it's going to get explosive.
Yeah, that could be a pretty nice little – there are a couple of pretty good races that are happening. The American League Central is going to be fun the next 3 weeks with the Twins and the White Sox and the Indians. The NL East is going to be fun. And for some people, if you're a Yankees fan, Ben, I think they're fighting for the last spot in the American League. They're fighting for that kind of 8th seed in the American League. How about that?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy how that's shaped up. But to me, it's all coming down to health, right? I mean, the Yankees have been bruised and battered all year.
Yeah,
they get Gleyber Torres off the IL. He's having a monster night tonight. He's homered and doubled. They got DJ LeMahieu back, who was homered tonight. They're starting to get some of their pieces back, and I don't know about Judge. I don't feel confident he's ever going to be healthy. Maybe again ever. That guy's just always hurt. And the Blue Jays are finally starting to get bit by the bug. Nate Pearson is hurt. Rowdy Tellez, their big DH, went on the IL today with a knee. Teoscar Hernandez, who, before this week was right at the top of the list on home runs, equal to Mike Trout for the Blue Jays. He's now on the IL with an oblique. I doubt he plays again this year. Bo Bichette, they're expecting him back this week, but he's been on the IL. So the Blue Jays are starting to get hit a little bit right now with the injury bug that the Yankees have had all year. So I don't really know what's going to happen in that AL East. And you got the Orioles, Greg. I mean, those guys just won't go away. So I think the Orioles, to me, are far and away probably fourth in that division. But the Yankees and the Blue Jays right now just have to find a way to keep guys on the field because they're bruised and battered all up and down.
Today's the 9th of September. 1 week from today, speaking of baseball, the Huskers will start their fall ball season. And we have put in a request to talk to the head coach, Will Bolt. It's been a while since we've caught up with him. Quite a bit to talk about. We can talk about how some of the guys competed in the summer months, talk about the remaking of this roster. There's a lot of new additions to the roster. There's some subtractions, too. There are guys that are no longer part of the program for various reasons. Some have retired. Some have decided to transfer. So there are a lot of familiar faces, too, on that roster as well. People will remember a lot of those names, but it's an interesting blend. So I know you're anxious, too, to hear from Will Bolt to see kind of what is going through his mind. There's still uncertainty, obviously, about next February and March for the baseball team, but you talk about a lot of moving parts, and I know we focused some on basketball and the moving parts that Fred Hoiberg and that staff have had. There have been a lot of moving parts to this baseball program over the last 3-4 months.
Yeah, there has, and I joke every year when I show up to the first, maybe even the fall practices, that I need to bring a card with me, a roster card, because I don't recognize half of them, or more than half in some cases. But I mean, this coaching staff, like if I were to do one of those trust falls, Greg, where, you just fall backwards, there are some coaches here like, you might drop me. I would trust every single baseball coach to catch me. I mean, I've got so much trust in those coaches with the way that they've built this roster, the way that they've recruited, identified talent, and even identified or developed some of the guys here, and just kind of changed their mindset a little bit. So I can't wait to meet them. And I normally can't, but I'm excited to see what these new guys can do. And for us, most of the time there's maybe 2 or 3, 4, 5 maybe new players of the team that come in and have an impact. And we're like, okay, well, let's see what this Spencer Schwellenbach kid's all about. Let's see what this guy can do or that guy can do. This year we're going to be filling out lineup cards going, yep, don't know what this guy can do. Don't know what. I mean, it is going to be. Even to a certain degree, the freshmen, I mean, we feel good about Leighton Banjoff, but, we haven't seen any of these guys do it over a long period of time. So we're going to be writing lineup cards and not have any idea what type of impact any of these kids are going to make, throughout the course of a season. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
I know there's still so much uncertainty. I had a guy stop me the other day and said, do you think they'll play the full schedule? I go, I don't know. Do you think they'll make those early season trips? I go, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of uncertainty, but they have been given clearance to do their fall workouts. They can't go play anybody in a kind of a exhibition setup like they've done the last couple of years that the NCAA approved the ability to do that. They played Wichita State. They've played Kansas the last couple of falls. They're not going to be able to do that, but they are going to be able to do their inter-squad scrimmage and their red-white scrimmage as well. And so a lot of those guys played all summer, went up to the Northwood. The Northwoods opened up their league up in Wisconsin and Minnesota in early July, and those guys got 30, 35 games. You had the league that went through Nebraska and South Dakota and North Dakota that went from late June until the third week of August. You had Cade Povich, who went down and played down in Savannah, Georgia, in a league down there, and did really well. In fact, he was named an All-Star. So those guys got in some play, even though they didn't have their year. The Big Ten in baseball could be really good, Ben, next spring because of the NCAA giving everybody their senior year back, and the Major League Baseball draft only being 5 rounds. This is going to be a loaded league, and I'm comfortable with where the Huskers are. I think they'll be very, very competitive in it, but it won't be a cakewalk. It'll be a real battle, I think, next spring in the Big Ten.
Which is great for the league. I mean, honestly, you prefer that. You prefer that as opposed to, let's just say it's hypothetically it's us, Indiana, and Michigan with good teams, and it's going to come down to how you do in those series. And the league is top to bottom isn't very good. You've got so much pressure to win that Big Ten tournament, and that you got to earn a berth. Now, Nebraska has always scheduled in a way to where that's not necessarily the case, but that's how it used to be before the Huskers were in the league. If there's only one or two teams that are competitive at the top, you better hope that your non-con SOS and your RPI are at a point where you're attractive to the committee. Otherwise, you're not getting into a regional. I think it's so much fun for us every day when we show up on a Friday or Saturday and we're following the league and we're seeing these teams that are right around the top 25 compete, and it sure makes it a heck of a lot more fun to call games when you've got a team that's 10 or 11 games above 500, and you're going to see a stud on Friday. You're going to see a couple of guys in the lineup that are going to get drafted. It makes it a lot more fun.
Ben, we're seeing a lot more Big Ten players in the big leagues. I mean, compared to when we went in this league 10 years ago, the number of guys that are making the big league rosters from Big Ten schools has gone up tremendously in the last 10 years. Much better quality of baseball. Need to work a break in? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, real quick. I've watched Major League Baseball every day, and every single day I watch a team and there's a Big Ten player. Last night I watched Tampa Bay. Here comes Aaron Slegers, the 7'14" monster, that we saw. And every single time I watch it, there's a Big Ten player playing somewhere.
Yeah, it's impressive. All right, need to take a break. Phone lines are open, 531-500-4686. We're back to wrap up hour 2 next. Yes, into our show. Dial us up on our Sports Nightly hotline, brought to you by the Woodhouse Auto Family, bringing you more choices in brands, locations, and service. Experience the difference. Purchase with confidence. This is Woodhouse. A couple of minutes left in the hour. 531-500-4686, the number to dial us up with a comment or question. NHL playoffs tonight, East Conference. Finals, you've got a 1-1 tie after one period. Your Tampa Bay Lightning and the New York Islanders. Tampa Bay, what they score, 7 or 8 goals in game? Good gosh.
Let's hope there's a few left in there. They didn't burn them all in the first game.
Goodness gracious. In a conference final to have an 8-goal output's got to be darn near a record, I would think, right?
Yeah.
In a conference championship?
Pretty fun stuff.
I've watched some of that. Obviously, the NBA playoffs. Tim might disagree. No, I think Tim will agree. I think the NHL has been more entertaining than the NBA. Tim, is that too far-fetched?
Oh, I'd double down on that. No, I definitely agree. I mean, hey, I've been watching more hockey than I've been watching more. Yeah, no, than I've ever in my life. Yeah, definitely, I'm down.
Tim, who do you want to win the cup?
Yeah, I would say the Islanders, but they're also a New York team, and I've got a thing against rooting for New York teams, so I guess still them, especially because they would be taking down your fake Tampa Bay Lightning fandom. So that's good for me.
Tim, I've been a Lightning fan since probably before you were born or close to it.
When was that? What do you think that was?
What year were you born?
When did Tampa Bay even 96? But when did Tampa Bay even become a franchise? That's my question.
Vinny LeCavalier, Marty
92.
St. Louis.
No, I'm sorry.
Those are my guys back in the day.
I didn't mean to question your fandom. I apologize.
I think you did. Though.
Okay, I definitely did. You're right. I did.
Yeah. It's pretty obvious.
I mean, it couldn't be any more fake than you rooting for the Patriots and Tom Brady.
Oh, okay. Good time to end the hour, boys. Good stuff here. Thanks to Lane Grindle for stopping by. We'll be in with him again next Wednesday night. Buy, sell. We'll see how we fared on our questions from last week and fire you some new ones. That's coming up next.